See this guy? He's a British politician who sent a picture of his genitalia to a guy he was swapping messages with on Grindr, as one does. Wait, as probably most people would never do. Grindr is a gay dating app which used to be owned by Chinese people, but the US forced them to sell it to Americans because, as everyone now knows, the US is surprisingly authoritarian and the Chinese surprisingly adverse to getting involved in wars. Now, the guy on Grindr who received the pictures of the official Conservative Party genitalia asked for phone numbers of other male British politicians and media people. Now, the first guy, whose name was Willie Ragg, I did not make that up, duly provided those phone numbers. Those people were then contacted and at least two replied with images of their own genitalia. Now, at this point, some of you will be asking, what are British people like? Is it safe to open messages from British people? To which I reply, yes, most British people are perfectly reasonable individuals and some are among the best human beings I've ever met. But British politicians and journalists, different story. Here's where it gets bizarre. Politicians and media start printing that this was the fault of China or Russia. The New York Times quotes an expert saying how plausible it is that this was all arranged by Russia or China. The Times of London newspaper today published a long piece about the flying genitalia images, linking to an allegation that China was interfering with British elections, a story I debunked in a separate video. A politician named Bob Seeley told Newsnight that the story was crude enough to be the Russians, but that the Chinese tend to be more sophisticated. The Daily Mail says it's a honeypot trap, quoting people blaming Russia or China. Meanwhile, social media voices are also blaming China and or Russia. So that's the story. Anyway, I'm absolutely sure this has nothing to do with China. That country's leadership has not the slightest interest in British politics as a whole, let alone intimate details of Mr. Ragg's body parts. But here's something missing in the discussion. In all the acres of coverage of this, I've not seen a single person say what should be obvious. Normal people don't send pictures of their genitalia to strangers, and people who do are probably a bit strange and maybe should not be running the country. Just a thought. Peace.